You. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Linnea sends her regrets. She was hoping to join via Zoom, but I think she's got a sick kiddo at home. So, and herself didn't feel great. So she apologizes for not being here. But we'll start right in with the agenda. And can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the November meeting?
So moved.
Right, second.
A second.
All in favor or any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any abstain? Oh, all right, then we're all set with those. Work group reports. I just passed out two, one for meeting Linnea and I had, and another for collaboration and resources. Did the other groups meet? Communications did not.
We did.
And DEA, I did not. Okay, so this will be short then. We only have the two reports. Do you need a copy,
I
Jeffrey?
do, thanks.
Where did the piles of reports end up? Everyone, are they back with you, Sean? Yeah, Jeffrey, thank you. So I'll first go over our co-chair meeting that Linnea and I had. Essentially, we reached out to Lisa Burke McCoy at New Hampshire State Council on the Arts and said, as a new commission just forming, can you make a recommendation of what other commissions are out there doing really interesting work that we could talk to? So she recommended 3 to us. We had conversations with 2 of them, one of whom was the Sunapee Arts Business Alliance. I'll try to just go over these very briefly. And I have a lot of things hyperlinked in here, so I'll make sure you get an email of them as well. The Sunapee Arts Business Alliance is not a traditional city commission. They're a more regional focus, and they're really trying to bring arts and culture awareness to an area that's heavily focused on outdoor recreation. So they're trying to develop a real identity and a real kind of sense of, the term they used was sense of place for arts and culture within Sunapee. As a part of that, they developed an arts atlas, which I highly recommend you go check out on their website if you have not already. It is a printed map design, or it's currently a PDF version of a map designed by a local artist that lists all the arts and culture attractions. It's really well done. And their next goal is to turn that into more of like an online interactive map that you can build out. But as they referenced multiple times with us, they are small with limited resources. So this is like the one project they have done. They also wanted to build out an artist directory, but Lisa Burke McCoy said, that's duplicating the work of Creative Ground. So instead have encouraged all of their local artists to use Creative Ground as their kind of art directory. So they now push people to use that resource. They also were thinking about, in kind of connecting to the outdoors, using the Trail Finder app technology that exists to build something similar for the arts in their region. Again, they're a regional focus. They're a much bigger area than we're talking about with just Portsmouth, but it was interesting to see how the Arts Atlas came together and what that looked like as something that specifically called out arts and culture sites in the area. So again, I highly encourage you to take a look. If you go to their website, it's right there as like their major product that they push out.
Emma. Linnea has joined.
Oh, great. Thank you for
Hi,
being
Linnea.
here. Is there anything else you want to say about, sorry, I'm not sure when you joined, my back is to you. Is there anything else, Linnea, you wanted to say about the Sunapee Arts Business Alliance when we chatted with them?
Nope, I just jumped on and I heard probably towards the middle end of what you were saying, and yep, I think you captured it really well. And I'm going to have to jump off in about 15 minutes to take my very sad sounding son over to the pediatrician's office. He has some type of awful cough. Anyway, so
Thank you for being here with us.
Sure.
For the next 15 minutes.
Emma, quick question.
Yeah.
I know the next one talks more about budget, but
Mhm.
how did they fund the design with the local artists for the Atlas?
There was a destination council that was funded, and they had the funding
Okay.
to pull that together.
Got it.
It's a good question. So they work closely with this destination council that had just been set up to put this together.
Okay.
And that's why it's still taking them so long to do any next step projects, because of that. I think because they're so new and it's regional, they're figuring out how that all those funding pieces work.
The
I'm
specific
not
to that.
grasping what the destination council is.
It was something that was set up in their county. like how in a city you might have a business improvement district or something, they have a destination council that was set up in their region specifically as like a tourism focus to draw people to that area. Again, they're looking at a very regional range as opposed to us where we're just focused on Portsmouth. They're looking at the whole Sunapee region. So that's what they were telling us was they kind of built out of this destination council that came. And really the two women we talked to said it's a business alliance, but really when it comes down to it, it's the two of us doing all the work. So, you know, they were being very candid with us about what was working and what wasn't. And they do have this wonderful product to show for it. But they were very much aware of what their capacity was, because this is like all of us, they have full-time paying jobs, and this is kind of a thing that they are able to do as a volunteer basis on the side.
Mhm.
We also talked with Judy Carlson of the Nashua Arts Commission. That was interesting to see because they just adopted their arts and culture plan in 2022, and theirs is a 5-year plan. I hyperlinked it in here again when it goes out in email. I encourage you to look at it. It was very interesting to see, and also I think what Linnea and I both picked up in our conversation, even though it says it's an arts and cultural plan, they're an arts commission and they're very much more focused on the arts than more of the culture side, where we talk about historic preservation and other things outside of traditional arts venues. Theirs was a little more narrowly focused from what we saw. They do have a $40,000 budget. 35,000 of that goes to grant making. And specifically, they do grant asks of up to $5,000 to other nonprofits to support programming primarily focused on children. So they, again, have a fairly narrow grant focus. We ask they don't do any grants to artists. It's only nonprofits. In the past, before COVID, they had done professional development, and they had sent a survey out to businesses to ask what they wanted to do. So one of the examples they gave was they brought in New Hampshire Tourism to talk to all the local arts and culture businesses about what resources are available to them, the joint joint promotion program, different things like that. But since COVID, they haven't revived that. And now they were really working on advocacy and connecting to other town departments. And my sense, Linnea, you can correct me here, my sense in that kind of increase in advocacy was they asked for more city funding last year and did not get it. So they were working with other city departments to really show the value of what the commission brings. So they gave examples of working with DPW and Parks and Recs on collaboration to show that value to the city of what they do, I think in an effort to try to increase their budget line item.
Sean, I think Catherine might be in the waiting room.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for catching
Yeah.
that. Their commissions or their committees, their work groups under the commission are outreach and grants. But it felt like the biggest focus of their work was on the grant making side of things. And they didn't really talk much about other programming that they did, especially post-COVID. So we were having these conversations in the hopes of if there was some nugget that we could pull out or bring someone in to talk to the whole group about what they experienced. But, you know, knowing that Nashua Arts Commission is primarily focused on grant making, and that Sunapee kind of has this one map that they do. It was interesting. And I think there are some things that we can pull for future use.
Mhm.
Did they
Yeah.
give an example of like a child-related nonprofit that those $5,000 grants are going to?
It's not necessarily a child-related nonprofit, but it would be programming for youth. So like
Okay,
if some group did an art class for children
okay.
or something like that, but it seemed like a heavy focus was on youth programming,
Mhm.
which was interesting to me.
Yeah.
That their grants were small, that they were only to nonprofits, and specifically that they focused on youth.
Mhm.
I thought that was interesting. Linnea, did you have anything you wanted to add about our conversation with Nashua?
I would say just the common theme between the two of them was the number of people to do the work, right? It seems like for both of them, it was falling on just one or two people to really carry something on who were also trying to, as you said, like maintain these other jobs that they do. In Nashua, I think she had said she had been on the selection committee for the grants for many years and then tried to remove herself from that committee to do other things, but she at least kind of internalized that she had been doing a lot of the work. So I think I took away kind of giving ourselves grace. We have a lot of big ideas too, but we're very busy, and so I know we'll be talking about shaping our plan for the next year. But talking to both of these groups, knowing that identifying very specific projects and not making it too big, because we don't have a single paid staff person who is going out and doing this. We're all trying to accomplish it, and we can do some really great things. But I kind of took that away as a common theme.
Thank you.
Did-
Any other
um,
questions about that? Yeah,
Does Nashville receive any additional funding, or is it just that 40,000 in the budget
just that 40 and from the city.
from the state?
Yep.
So
And
they
I-
don't have a mechanism like a 501c3 to receive? Okay.
Not that she shared with us.
Yeah.
No. But, and I think they had, am I right in thinking at various points in their time had like a very dedicated city staff member who was like helping to move some of their items along a little more expeditiously than other staff members they got. It sounded like it,
Right, yes.
the
Yep.
pace of their work depended on the city staff that was helping to support that work. And that they'd seen things move quickly and seen things not move quickly at all based on that. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Interesting.
And I think we were both grateful for our work with Sean. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Great. Any other questions about those conversations we had? Okay. The other report is for collaboration and resources. We had a meeting with Fenway Art Studios. I wrote up this report, but if anyone from the group wants to give the summary, so I'm not hearing myself talk for the next few minutes, I would welcome that if any of you want to.
Had to hop off
Recap
early,
that.
but what I heard of
Okay.
it was really interesting. And I still, it's one of those where we looked at a couple other examples of artist live work spaces where something initiated it and then something else sustained it. And in an instance like this, it sounds like it was the artist that initiated it and have kept it going for decades at this
Mhm,
point.
mhm.
And a lot of the decision making, including who gets to be a resident, comes down to, you know, a group of other residents making
Yes.
those decisions. They did have, when it comes to funding, they did have a separate entity called the Friends of Fenway or something. So that's a big question for me always. Any money that they have coming in to support their operations can go through that separate nonprofit, and it works that way. So that made sense. But there were lots of other things that I'm not sure really would make sense if we just picked up Fenway and put it here in Portsmouth as a model. But yeah, it was really interesting, and I was so grateful for all, they shared so much, including
Yeah,
images of the different studios. I was like, I want to go walk through and
Yeah.
live there. That looks
Yeah.
awesome.
It's 1905.
Yeah,
Yeah.
since 1905, it was purpose-built as Artists Live Work Studios. And what stuck out to me as being interesting is it's privately run, right? The city is not involved with it, which is why they have this, oh, what's the correct term for it? Limited equity form of ownership. So it's a version of a co-op, which is how they can keep their costs low for artists who want to move in there. However, they did tell us the way the studios were designed and how most of their artists live workspaces is it's visual artists. That's really who it
Mhm.
appeals to the most. And in terms of the way the studio space is set up, it sounds like they've been working to build a sense of community within that co-op in terms of coming together to do exhibitions or do shared space, or, you know, not just having their own solo studios, but really advertising the benefit of being in this studio space. And the Friends of Fenway, what I thought was interesting, really helps to fund the building maintenance
Mm.
because their costs are so low for artists to buy into this co-op model. that they were realizing they had to do all this critical building maintenance on a 1905 building. So the Friends of Fenway really comes in and helps with grant funding or other outside sources of funding for that. What was also, and they had a lot of, things that are in the works. They're actually revising their bylaws now because their current bylaws restrict membership to visual artists. So they're reevaluating that. What I thought was really valuable from our conversation too was they gave us a lot of other references of live work models of things that worked and things that failed. So I put some of those in here, 30 Summer Street, 249 8th Street Co-op, but they said maybe that's an example of what not to do. And I also included a link. The Boston Housing Authority has an artist housing program for something that is publicly owned, and certainly building on the conversations with the Sherburne School. They have the city of Boston has a whole separate kind of program you can apply to and get a certification for artist housing, and then you can get into any one of their artist housing that the Housing Authority runs. Now Fenway is separate because they're privately owned, but it was interesting to see the kind of differences in the public and private models in terms of artist live workspace. And they also mentioned the Piano Factory, which used to be artist co-op space, but failed and is now market rate condos. So that was also interesting to dig into that a little bit more of, there have been these models, and I'm certainly interested in digging more. If things didn't work, why not? Because if we're looking to build something that's sustainable here in Portsmouth, we certainly want to avoid pitfalls that have happened in other cities. But Karen, Jeffrey, was there anything you wanted to
It
add?
was
to that?
really interesting that on their co-op model, the artist actually had an ownership stake in it as a shareholder in the co-op, which kind of like goes along with that it was actually the initial, way back in 1905, was by the artists. So which means that, as a community is self-screening, and admission, they have a whole process, and they're like a 5-year waiting list. And you initiate your application with a CV, and your portfolio and resume just to get on the waiting list. And then if your name comes up, then you have a second round of a peer review process. I think in anything that, involves with the city, the things that we're doing, I'm not so comfortable with this being admission by a peer review process, but it certainly does raise the question of what the criterion, the process of the application process, what you need to provide. Our answer, I think, would be different than theirs, but it really is something to wrestle with, in terms of like the definition, what is an artist? So when they have mostly visual artists, it's mostly painters. In our case, a jeweler could qualify, a potter could qualify if their kiln is somewhere else. And you could go through, an upholsterer, probably, but basically the quiet industries, I certainly would not qualify, in our kind of a place, because I'm much more like industrial. So as we get into it, and especially with Portsmouth Historical Society being selected for the Sherburne.
The Housing Authority.
Not the
The
Historic
House-
Society.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, we are not
Housing
in
Authority.
property development, yeah, but.
So
Please
it
no.
looks like, it looks like, okay.
Yeah.
It looks like something on that area with the Sherburne, where the way Andrea presented to us could really be in the works. And there's a big question for there as to what's the process for entry and application. It would be different from what they presented to us.
Right. Karen.
Yeah, just one other thought I wanted to share is I liked their focus on young emerging artists. And they have space in the basement of their building, which kind of looks a lot like the Button Factory. I mean, it's also right on train tracks and it's all brick. But at the bottom, they made these very small studio spaces. They said they're very inexpensive. We didn't get a price on it. And that's for young emerging artists. And they also established a gallery. So I thought there was some interesting design ideas that came out of it that were very useful. And the proceeds from the gallery exhibits also goes back into a lot of the building maintenance.
Yeah, and that's a good point you bring up about those basement spaces. Basically, the co-op ended up owning a few of the units and now rent them out to people who maybe can't afford to buy into the co-op model. So as a young and emerging artist, they rent out on what they call it, kind of short-term, and I would guess year to year basis for that. So it's allowed them to expand their reach in that way and support emerging and younger artists. So that was neat to see how they were kind of restructuring their model to accommodate that.
Yeah, and I think as now Portsmouth Housing Authority with the Sherburne, we did as a commission offer up any of our own insights and expertise from a design and all that. So I just think it's been very valuable to learn what other live work spaces look like and how they're functioning. So
Exactly. And I should note too, Andrea Pickett had asked to join that conversation with us from Portsmouth Housing Authority. So she was in that conversation as well as Counselor Cook. So
You know, the other comment that I'm thinking is that a lot of the people there are professors and teachers and maybe have arts related incomes, salaries, and things like that. Which is interesting because that's different than what we'd be looking at. So this group of established arts professionals put aside this one section for emerging, which is to their credit. But the core of who's there is people who are known quantities, connected to universities, things like that.
yeah.
I would
Good.
add one more quick thing.
Sure.
Andrea was there, Kate was there. That's great. Just want to make sure, because it was voted on. We can talk openly with you in the room now about, all right, great, awesome. So, their plan that was approved did include artist live workspace, but I think we identified in this room that it very much is boilerplate and we don't really know what it looks like yet.
Mhm.
And also the plans could change as well at this point. They're the partners now in this operation, but I think it's gonna be that much more important that we are pushing forward, finding models that do work and continuing to get that information over to the housing authority so that potentially we could act on it. I know that one of the biggest things as we have been diving into this area of the cultural plan is, well, we don't have a building or we don't have a plot of land to make something like this a reality. Now we do. So there's a perfect
Mhm.
example. It's been approved, it's going forward, and we just need to keep the heat on the people that can make a decision about it, of the importance of this work.
Is there a time frame? We're gonna give suggestions for this. Is there a time, a drop dead date by when we have to do that?
Yes. So I think it's important to know that PHA is going to be the developer of the property. They have a timeline that they're working on, which includes public input, a public input process that starts this winter. And, so you should be really mindful of their timeline, which is on the city's website under housing. So look under housing plans for Sherburne, look for Sherburne. You just do a search for Sherburne, it'll come up and you can look at their housing plan and the time frame that they're anticipating. And so you should watch for those public meetings. But that is note one of 3 potential plans for the
Mhm.
site. So, and it also involves some, an extended time frame if they're doing live workspace. They would develop one piece first, and then that comes kind of as phase 2, the second phase. So, so there may be a little bit more time for that, but it would be good that they, choose a plan early, in this process. And we actually had another victory too, at the council around live workspace. The council did refer to the planning board and the legal department a request for looking at, artists live work overlay, like an overlay district in the West End. So,
Awesome.
so that'll go then to planning and legal and they'll start discussing it. But that's one step. And the planning department was really, they were kind of like excited about talking about this possibility
Mhm.
and what
Great.
could be done as far as incentives to make that happen. So
That's great.
our fingers crossed.
Thank you, Kate.
Great.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
So glad to
Yes.
hear that.
That's really great.
Just a quick thought on the Sherburne and just with the Portsmouth Housing. So this would be kind of our first opportunity as a commission to be advocating for what's in the cultural plan for this type of situation. What's the best way, and I'm just throwing this out for discussion, or if anybody has any ideas, to keep that advocacy between our commission and Portsmouth Housing Authority for at least part of the building to be dedicated to artist work, live space. I just don't want that to get lost. So how do we keep that? I mean, we can look on their agenda, look at their time frame, but I don't know if somebody wants to serve as like point or just, or maybe, so I'm just throwing it out there because it is really important. I think that a portion of that building comes out as work, live space for artists. Some way, shape or form. So.
And I'm happy to keep reporting back as we, with time frame, and I'm sure that Sean would be happy to send out a schedule so you guys know when then there's when there is a public input on that process, but somebody should stay in touch with
Yeah,
Andrea Pickett.
she's been proactive in reaching out to Linnea and I, so we can certainly do that, and maybe collaboration resources. That feels like a natural, because we've been talking about artist live workspace.
Yeah.
We can continue to build on that in our work group meetings that we report back to the full commission, so.
And if I can just suggest, if the public input that came in through the cultural plan for artists live workspace, especially for affordable, that those focus groups and those survey responses are added to whatever public input meeting she's doing. Because you never know what, I mean, we kind of went through the same thing. You never know who's going to turn up. But if we could bring both of those together, I think the wealth of information will be pretty abundant. So that'd be my thought.
Council Cook, you could help me out here, but at the end of the day, this is going to be a contract between the city of Portsmouth and PHA, right? They are separate entities,
Mhm.
meaning it is PHA who needs to say what they're going to develop in the contract. It's not for us to tell them per se. So just to be clear on that.
Yeah.
The city council's goal is to maximize affordable housing. So this twist, I'll just say,
Yeah.
it is not, a prescribed number one goal of the city council. So just to be clear,
Yeah.
I think to your point, Karen, it's about staying connected to Portsmouth Housing Authority, who
Yeah.
is the developer,
Yes.
right? Who's gonna have a contract with us, with the city to do that. Okay, just
Yeah.
to be ultra clear.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very important. And this gets them this plan, which is their 1A plan. If you look at it, gets them to 108 units on site. There is a second plan that gets them to 129 units. I don't know if they'll be able to manage that because that requires tearing down the building and there wasn't a lot of support for that.
Right.
So it's more likely to be 1 or 1A, but who knows? Who knows what happens in that
Yeah.
public input process. And so that's a really important thing to remember.
Yeah, so stay tuned if you're not subscribed to our newsletter. All meetings and public meetings and ultimately agendas are put out there, but at least you get the weekly newsletter that might tip you off that there's something going on. It comes out every Monday, something going on Thursday night or afternoon that I want to be at.
Yep.
Or we want to be at. So if you're not subscribed to that, please.
So if PHA is running the input sessions,
Mhm.
it'll still be on the city newsletter.
Likely just because
Likely,
we want to make
because
sure that
it's-
people are aware, but
Mhm.
it's not, the housing authority is not the city, separate.
Yeah.
So they have their own,
So publicizing their input session is their doing.
yes, it is.
And anything the city does is,
It's just supplemental to try to make sure
Supplemental.
people show up and are aware. So, so they could call, an input session that we didn't find out about early enough to make the newsletter. So just, you kind of have to pay some attention to what they're doing, but it will be in the first quarter of the year. So I think that that's really critical. They have to hit a deadline of September, I think it's September 1st for their tax credits.
Okay.
So it will be early in the year.
So what do we actually need to do in order to come forward with some sort of recommendation or ideas?
Well, we've taken the first step by putting that statement out about what we support and our willingness to help. Help advise on this process. It was just a statement. At this point, it seems like advocacy is the word,
Yes.
the biggest tool we have at our disposal,
Mhm.
because beyond that, we can't officially do anything. Also, the housing authority could choose a plan that doesn't include this. It's, they have
Right.
that ability now. So I would definitely like to know about any meetings coming up so I can try to be there,
Mhm,
even just to sit in the room.
mhm.
Because they know the faces now and, you know,
Mhm.
those kind of things can be helpful. If we need to make another statement, that would probably be. If they come to us and ask for help, then we certainly have our
Mhm.
um. Charging orders, but that would be my guess.
I mean, do we want to at some point go forward and say, you know, we've done this research and here are things we found that have worked in the past and here are things that haven't worked.
Just voluntarily provide.
Yeah,
Mhm.
be a little proactive.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the best thing we can do is like provide some.
I'm sorry, I need to ask a protocol question. I feel like I'm Eli right now because you always ask these questions, but if we're advocating, are we advocating as individual citizens? Are we advocating as members of the commission? And if so, are we representing the city in that capacity? Because what you just said, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And-
Yeah.
You can represent the commission, but you can't represent the city.
Yeah.
So if the commission makes a decision that it forwards to the council and the council votes, it's different.
Mhm.
But you can represent the commission and what the commission's view is, and you can write letters to
Mhm.
other entities and say, you know, the Arts and Cultural Commission discussed this and we've been working on, and we're happy to cooperate. I mean, you can do all of that. They have a board of directors, so you can reach out to their board of directors, you know, so it's like you would with any other entity in the city. And so just think of it that way, but
Mhm.
you know, that's the limitation, is you can represent, but if the committee doesn't vote, then you're representing yourselves.
Right.
So
Mhm.
a public input. So just remember that too.
Yeah,
I'm not exactly clear because when we were speaking to the council, my impression was as long as I was reading the text that we approve, I was representing the commission.
Mhm.
Yes,
Correct.
And anything I said after that was representing myself.
yes.
Correct.
So, I mean, I can read the statement and I can say, I agree and I think that blah, 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 rather than we.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you
I've
can do that.
I've seen people at meetings go up and say that they sit on a committee, however, they are there speaking for themselves.
Mhm.
So they're just really clear.
But
Mhm.
when I'm reading the language that we approve,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, yeah.
speaking on behalf of the
Yes.
commission.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think you can do both. I think you just have to be
Yes.
clear which hat.
Which hat you're wearing,
Yeah.
exactly.
When you're speaking.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's a
Yes,
2-for-1,
that's
right?
right.
It's a two-
Right, but what I'm saying is you switch hats in the middle of your speech.
Yeah.
I'm now
You
reading
can.
this
Yep.
with the
Yes.
commission hat on. And I would say, personally, I agree 100% with my hat.
I think the important thing to remember is anytime you're speaking on behalf of the commission, it has to be something that we've all voted on and approved.
Yep.
That you can't get up and say, I'm speaking on behalf of the commission and we don't care about Artists Live Workspace, right? It has to be something that we've all agreed upon is the bigger takeaway from this. I think we should all have. So that kind of leads nicely into our next topic on the agenda, which is a mini retreat that we had talked about last time. And thinking about that for January, and taking 3 or 4 hours in an afternoon. Just, I know DEI group was hoping for a little more direction on how to move forward. I think it can also give us a little more time to tease out Sherburne and PHA and any additional statements, how we want to move that path forward in terms of the advocacy with PHA, and anything else that comes up. So our next scheduled meeting date was for MLK Junior Day. So Linnea and I were looking at other Mondays. The one that would work best for us would be Monday, January 13th. If we did something in the afternoon, like start at the same time around 1, but maybe go till 4, perhaps even 5. Does that work for folks?
Would be away.
Remote or in person?
Preferably in person. You're away?
I am away on vacation.
Okay,
I'd have to leave by 4.
by 4, okay. How about the 27th? Is that any better for folks?
That's good.
Not for you.
I'm away.
Okay.
I have the same issues. Mondays I go to prison.
Okay. What about if we did earlier in the day? On either the 13th or the 27th? Does that change for any? Well, you're still away the 13th, Karen, but what about earlier in the day on the 27th?
That works. for
No.
me.
I'm out of the country.
You're out of the country. Okay.
Would this be this would still be it would have to be a public meeting, right? Publicly posted?
If we're all meeting together,
Yes,
okay.
it has to be publicly noticed. But you don't have to have a Zoom recording
Okay,
for that meeting.
great.
Should we look for a different day of the week then, since
Mm.
it's something?
Where do you travel to?
We can,
I leave on.
Maybe a doodle
Come
poll.
back on.
I think, yeah, a doodle poll at this point, because without Linnea here, I don't want to plan anything without her
Right.
schedule. We had talked about the Monday before and after, but since that's not a consensus,
Mhm.
she and I will coordinate on our schedules and send a doodle poll, but we're thinking like a 3 to 4 hour block. We're gonna see if Carey Cottage may be available for us. Preference would be that we could all be in person to do this. If you needed to be virtual, that's fine, but preference would be in person.
The EDC has scheduled their annual retreat for a Friday
Mhm.
in the Levinson room. So the library, those rooms are schedulable.
Yes, they are. That's correct.
So that's just what seems to work for them. And they do it on a Friday. They don't do it the same day as a meeting.
Mhm.
They just commit to an extra meeting.
Mhm.
Okay.
So just to
Okay.
share that.
Mhm.
And then they do it over a lunch. So maybe that's helpful to say, bring your lunch or whatever, and let's have a brainstorming session kind of thing.
Okay.
I have a
Yes.
note
I'm sorry,
when
yeah.
we moved January to the 21st. Was that just me imagining stuff, or did we actually do that?
Maybe we did.
We have to, because that's a federal holiday, so the
Mhm.
building is closed.
So, no, I say I have the meeting moved to the 21st, which is Tuesday.
Oh,
And so the question is, was I just being proactive on my calendar here, or is that something we actually decided?
I think you were proactive.
Yeah,
I don't have
yes.
it on my calendar. It's the
So
21st.
did
Sean,
my-
could you check? Do you happen to know if you could check to see, well, first of all, could people, if we moved our regularly scheduled meeting to Tuesday, the 21st, say at 1 o'clock, would that work for folks?
I can't, I'm teaching a class
Okay,
because I didn't have this adjustment and
Yeah.
it should have dawned on me that it was a federal holiday, so
Okay.
apologize.
Then after that, 12:15 is the peer exchange.
that's right. Yes, I have. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe not the 21st, and I don't know what this, is gonna ask you about if anyone's scheduled in this room at that time.
Mhm.
Okay,
on the 21st, or do you want to?
but the 21st, yeah, you're right. There's a
Exchange,
statewide arts and culture commission at a similar time.
Yeah.
So I
Should we
don't
do a
think we wanna that.
doodle on that as well? A doodle poll?
Land on a date, you've got options, whether it's
Yeah, so we'll
library
do-
or
we'll
this room, which I
27th.
would almost say, get out of this room,
Yeah.
just because
Yeah.
you want to create a different.
Yes.
So whether
No,
it's
but-
Just
Carey
thinking if we
Cottage,
wanted to have a regular
meeting?
scheduled meeting, but it may make
Okay.
sense to tack
Got
that
it.
on before, after the meeting, since it sounds like we're all
Canada.
in different places in January, so. All right, a doodle poll will be forthcoming
Yeah.
about both a January meeting and a retreat, which we may put into one, but we'll see.
Mhm.
Yes.
So, so I'm
Mhm.
happy to I will likely miss the meeting in
Okay.
January. I'm not available after the 17th for the rest of the month. So, for a retreat, and so
Thank you. Okay. A doodle poll will be forthcoming. Thank you, everyone. All right, there's that. And now burning issues. Jen and Karen, you've had a few items you wanted to
Yeah.
bring up, so I will turn it over to you.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so Karen and I just had a meeting because we wanted to start just talking about and looking at potential grant funds. But I think the biggest thing is we can't apply for any funds unless we know what we are applying for.
Mhm.
And I suspect that retreat will maybe identify some things that we want to do. But one of the things just to think about is that if you're applying for grants, we have to have a clear statement of need, and it has to be documented. If we might have a great idea, but we have to prove that it's needed and necessary and that there is public demand for it. We also have to have in place a work plan and timeline for the project. and a way that it's going to be evaluated. And also if there will be matching funds, where do they come from? And something that, I was thinking about that place you talked about that had the separate 501c3, since we don't receive any funding through the city, if a match is required, where does that come from and how do we account for it? So those are all things, once we decide on a project, then we can look at all of those things and then we can start thinking about funding. There are grants out there, but they're all very specific. And I think the other thing is we had recommended, and this is something for you and Linnea to think about, that we invite Lisa Burke McCoy to come in and talk to us about some of the best practices, not just in the state of New Hampshire, but around the country, and some innovative projects and funding sources. And she is a treasure trove of information about all of that, which might give us some ideas. And I think, well, you want to talk about the other things that you were doing?
Yeah, we got a lot done in her.
We did.
Yeah, we did. So certainly not only having a project or projects in mind with a well-defined need, but just in any way that we can align to the New Hampshire State Council of the Arts and their priorities, which aligns up to the national level. So I did get my hands on the 2023-2025 strategic plan and just trying to just kind of cross-referencing with our cultural plan and just seeing where there might be points of intersection, just for the sake of thinking about, what projects we might want to put some muscle behind. So I'm in the process of doing that. And then when I was looking on the internet and just trying to find again, how are other commissions being funded? One commission in particular did come up in a couple different searches I was doing, and it's out of the city of El Cerrito in California. They're in the Bay Area. They have had a very active and seems like quite successful commission that's been in place since 2003. And they were very willing to have a conversation with us. So we have a Zoom call with them in I guess it's the third week of January, just to kind of pick their brain and learn from them. They too also have a cultural plan. I think their cultural plan was done, in 2013. So again,
Their
just
population is 22,000.
So
So it's very
very-
close. to
yes,
Portsmouth, unlike
yes.
Boston and some of the other. cities. That
Yes.
was the main.
that was, yep, absolutely. So, yeah, so I
If
think
anybody
those
wants
were-
to join us on that, we can, I think it's the 17th. No.
Could you send the details or the calendar invite to Sean so Sean can
Sure,
send it
Yes,
around to all of
24th
us?
of
Yes.
January, yes.
yes. you
That
want me
would
to
be
do that?
great.
You wanna
Thank
do
you.
that? Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll do it.
Yep, because I think you set this
On
one up.
Zoom, I think. Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
And then we can send out, they've got a biannual work plan, which might be a good little to look at in terms of our retreat, in terms of how they've mapped out their priorities.
And did you want to talk about that arts destination?
Oh,
This was
yeah.
just a brainstorm.
Yeah,
so-
yeah, and that I think, I don't know if it was Nashua, but they had like a destination commission. So just the idea of are there different groups around the city that might enjoy some sort of a arts destination? When I say arts, certainly not visual arts, where they're going to an artist studio like myself or the Historic Society or, Music Hall, Prescott Park or whatnot. And we just think that there might be an opportunity for community groups to come on site to us, as part of like a destination experience. So just throwing that out there as an idea. Maybe that's something that I know Jen had suggested
A lot of
partnering with.
businesses do
Yeah.
annual conferences. They're always looking for something interesting. I mean, we've hosted them at the theater. We give them a bunch of costumes and let them play for a while, maybe do some specific activities with them. And you were hosting some at your studio to
Yeah.
come and do an
Yeah.
activity together. So we were thinking that it would be interesting. It could be individual artists and their studios, and some of the arts organizations, to just something that we offer. I've talked to the chamber about this too at different times.
Yeah.
So just a thought.
And I think the idea with businesses, again, a lot of businesses, maybe to celebrate the holidays, they might just put a small spread of food out that nobody eats. So could it be an opportunity to bring a sense of community together and team building, quite honestly, and doing something that's enjoyable and something related to the arts? So just something we were kind of fussing around. So, yeah.
I just had a question. I mean, this is kind of for Sean more than anyone. But is this something that the EDC might be interested in looking at with the Arts and Cultural Commission?
Could be. We have our retreat coming up on January 24th. So my brain was going to the chamber and the tourism summit.
Mhm.
Sure.
Anybody attended that in the past?
Yes, we go every year.
I think
Mm.
being in a room with a lot of businesses that are in the tourism game and thinking about what they're thinking about and might be a great way to connect if I'll say the arts and culture, which we know attracts visitors,
Mhm.
if there's some way to leverage and collaborate for the benefit of both. I'll give you an example. I mean, there are lots of businesses downtown that are working together who have not done that before.
Mhm.
Whether it's hotels, whether it's hospitality with retailers, whether it's retailers actually working together, which they are.
Mhm.
And then there's the nonprofit educational group that
Mhm.
went to the chamber and said, hey, we want to work together. So the chamber is facilitating them working together.
Mhm.
Right? I'm just a lot of these things with destination
Yeah.
and there's so many great tools and maps and inventories and things out there. It might just be an opportunity of focusing in on what is it that we can leverage or who can we partner with to deliver something, because there's a lot of great ideas. There's a
Yeah.
lot of need. However, my experience is if you're doing all this, it sometimes it's hard to deliver actual value. So I will get off of my soapbox, but
It made me think back to Sunapee and everything you presented on the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we have been tasked with building an inventory of all these places. That is part of the cultural plan. And we've been so focused on our lit workspace in our collaboration and resources, we haven't even touched on that really yet. But gathering and collecting all these different resources is definitely part of our work already to begin with. Start with tourism, when is that summit? You know,
I'll get you the date. I made a note, but I think it's mid to late January.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's coming.
'Cause I mean, some of this work has been done already for us. And it might just be a matter of supporting something or gathering, maybe posting something. And then if somebody's like, why am I not posted here? Well, we put it out there so everybody could see. And now we realize who you are and we'll facilitate the process of getting you listed as well. Something like that.
And just, I was going to add one other thought, as I was reading through the strategic plan, for the New Hampshire Council on the Arts. They do put some emphasis on professional development as an area of priority. And another great suggestion that Jen brought up is she's advised individuals that wanted to go into directing that not only learning performing arts, but maybe a good opportunity to take a visual class, a visual arts class.
Cross-disciplinary.
So then our minds get
Right.
going and we start thinking holistically and I know you teach public speaking. I've spoken with other artists that would love to do, teach classes, but they don't feel comfortable getting up in front of a group to teach. So I'm just thinking, could there be professional development, kind of a holistic approach to artists, hitting these different types of art fields that they could strengthen their own development. So thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, I think working with the state tourism office in some ways would be really helpful. They have extremely limited resources, but they use Portsmouth as kind of their poster child for
Mhm.
tourism. Even though, they don't have necessarily the connections to the art space, there's kind of an assumption that everything is going to continue to be here and be, there for, tourism and to support the state budget with rooms and meals tax. So I think having conversations with them about, concerns,
Mhm.
especially around our arts community and things like some declining attendance that we have in some of our
Mhm.
venues. would be incredibly helpful because I don't know if they understand that there is a challenge there.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
So,
That's a good point you bring up. And I like the idea of chatting with the chamber more to see if they can help facilitate something, especially as you're talking about with arts destination
Yeah.
experience. I'm
We could follow up with
pretty
Ben
sure I have a
or-
meeting already scheduled with Ben for tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So I'll bring it up to him
That'd be great.
and just see what his thoughts are. If there's someone at the state that he, because I know they're talking to state tourism as well. If there's someone he can kind of point us in the right direction of talking to at the state level, but also on a hyper local level here, if that's something they could help us facilitate, because we get the same thing of, there are people that come to town, whether it's for a conference or something else, but want to do group activities. And our walking tours are always
Mhm.
one of those things. But it'd be great if anytime a group engages a hotel or is talking to the chamber about bringing a conference here, here are all the, team building activities you can do,
Mhm.
highlight the great arts and culture in Portsmouth. So.
Yep.
There's we have a local business in town that is really thriving on
Mhm.
the group, the experiential programs that they offer, like really well. So
Mhm.
if that's something that is in your wheelhouse, if that's something that makes sense,
Mhm.
finding a way to, I guess, package and market it
Mhm.
is the opportunity
Yeah.
as another revenue stream. Looking at you,
Mhm.
Jen,
I know.
this conversation.
Thank you.
No, it's that's what I'm seeing with some of the small businesses, even the ones that have been here a long time, who really were uncomfortable with the softness in visitors this summer.
Mhm.
You've got to think differently.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's okay. It's okay. So because we have enough of the infrastructure here, we are going to draw tourists. Oh, that's hard to
Mhm.
say. But what are we doing differently to keep them coming back and talking about, if you haven't been to Portsmouth, you need to get there to
Yeah.
your friends.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking in terms of professional development and collaborations with the chamber,
Mhm.
the business people, I mean, there's a lot of artists looking for coaching on bookkeeping, pricing, marketing, the business of art, whole thing. And I mean, I've been to some of these kind of classes, branding, stuff like that. The chamber members would have a lot of useful information
Mhm.
for the artists in town
Mhm.
in that regard.
Mhm.
Have
Good
we
idea.
ever, I mean, I don't know if I've been here long enough to know this. Arts and culture in Portsmouth, has there ever been its own conference or anything like that? Like a gathering of all the arts and culture organizations in town? You can have a guest speaker talking about these challenges of people not selling tickets. You can have a guest speaker talking about all these aspects of the things we're talking about. Has anything like that ever happened here? I feel like the arts and cultural organizations always go to everybody else's conferences. And have we ever, there's so many of us here. Has this ever been hosted in Portsmouth?
Not that I
Not that
remember.
I'm aware of.
Sounds like a good idea.
Mhm.
Well, it sounds like an expensive idea, but.
Sounds like a great
Yeah,
opportunity for
doesn't
grant
have to
funding
be.
idea,
But
but
I
yeah.
was gonna say-
Yeah.
We're advocating for stuff from the city budget, that's certainly could be of value, it could be something, and I don't know, how, it works with the finances, but can we collect ticket admission for
Right.
that and use some of that to offset costs for that? I don't know, but, but it would, I think serve many of the purposes of what we're trying to do here.
Mhm.
At minimum, bring together a bunch of people in town
Mhm.
to start this process of conversation.
Mhm.
the city has helped with hosting a conference
Mhm.
before, the Keeping History Above Water conference, at least,
Mm.
the city was involved in helping to support that. And so we do have some expertise at the city around conference planning,
Mhm.
specifically in our, public relations, community outreach, department. So that would be, that might be worth a conversation with, Stephanie Secord in particular. I think, and she did a lot of the work on that conference and the
Yeah.
planning of that conference.
I can't recall if that, well, yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
yes. So,
I've planned a few events, never a conference, but I've done like timelines and programming and budgeting, so I have a little expertise, but
Mhm.
Mhm.
definitely hammer on that for the next month with my free time.
And I know that Linnea also,
Mhm.
Strawberry Bank was the other
Yeah.
major host. So we have the expertise. It's just a matter of
Yeah,
talking about it.
yeah, figuring out. Well,
Yeah.
these are all good ideas to put on an agenda for a mini retreat, so we can devote a little more time to teasing out what these
Yeah.
things would look like. And also prioritizing. I feel like often we find ourselves with all these great ideas, but again, a limit to our time and our resources. So trying to come up with a priority based on what we see happening. And I think what we've seen in the last year of being some of the more pressing needs, how we're going to prioritize that moving into the next year, and where we want to spend our time. So I have a short list from what we've talked about today that we can start to build for the agenda for the mini retreat. Which would lead me to say, if there's anything else you have as kind of a bigger idea that you'd like to spend some time talking out with the group, please send it to Linnea and I, and we can add it to that agenda for the mini retreat at a time to be decided. Did you all have anything else you wanted to bring to the group? I think that was it, right?
It's enough, isn't it?
Okay. It's plenty, but does anyone else have anything they want to bring up for burning issues? I feel like we addressed Sherburne, which was the big topic from last time. Is there anything else?
We do have a February meeting on the books, right? It's just the January one that had that conflict, so it's not.
Let's make sure it doesn't also overlap with. It'll overlap with President's Day, so lucky us. We'll need to find another date in February, because I'm assuming you're also closed. That's a holiday you have off. Yeah, okay.
In March, it's St. Patrick's Day.
Have to-
Yes. Not that that's a holiday for everyone.
Yeah.
So,
February, 1 week earlier, I can be here.
I want to talk to Linnea before we change anything for February and see when she might be free. So either we'll do a doodle poll, or maybe at the January meeting, we will figure out a February date, but it will not be on the 17th. I think
We don't have a January meeting.
yet. We will have a mini retreat where we will discuss these things. So we'll have to change the date for February to either, or to think the week before or the week after. Do you happen to know if anyone else is in here? Second or fourth Mondays? Is there an easy way for you to check? At 1
Not
o'clock?
as I sit here, but
Okay.
I
Could
can
you let
make
me
a
know?
note. I can make a note.
I would
Post
be
haste
second or fourth Mondays at 1 o'clock. Is anyone in this room
in February.
in February,
No,
please?
my committee's in here from 11 to 12:30, but we're out.
Okay.
We do need to look for January also, right?
We do, but I think we might be able to do, we
Just,
could
A
do
combo.
just a mini retreat.
Yeah.
If we're all
Yeah.
together, that's still technically a meeting, and we could still do, like, we could vote on minutes and
Right.
stuff like that.
normal businesses.
Yes.
I would vote for February 10th if at all possible,
Okay,
just because I'll be here.
And I'm
One
teaching
vote.
a class at the senior center for the
Okay.
Tree of Love. We're making ornaments for
Oh,
the Tree of
lovely.
Love, so I can't back out of that.
yes, okay. All right, well, we'll see when this room may be available, and we can go from there. All right, is there anything else? We will find meeting dates in 2025. Is there anything else anyone want to bring to the
Yes.
group?
A really small thing. I signed up for a class on Mondays for this next semester, so I'll be virtual. I don't know
Okay.
if That's worth noting, but just for
Thank you for letting
probably
us know.
February, March and April.
I have a quick question. What is the status of the rack cards?
Ah, what I should
Yes.
ask.
Oh, okay, bounce back to me, sure.
Back and forth.
We had another quote from, forgot their name, Southport,
Southport.
Oh, yeah.
and, were their numbers good versus our other ones?
I don't recall the other ones.
Perfect.
I-
Back and forth, back.
I think we're ready to.
Another quote, and the quote was, I thought, reasonable, and I think that when I called them, they've worked with the city before, so I don't know
Sure.
if you want to use them. But hopefully getting printed when we pick
Yeah.
that lowest price and or business that we've had. Them, but, I think for 1,000, it was like $270, so it wasn't too
Okay.
shabby. But they just said, I think it has to come from you.
Problem.
Because they were like.
Yeah.
who is this
Yeah,
person?
yeah. So is 1,000 the number that, I mean, I think that's a
I
good,
think that's a good number. And then like just from us talking and like maybe this will come up at the retreat, but maybe it would be interesting to bring something like that to like a hotel or something. I don't know. Or like
Yeah.
new places to drop things off where
Yeah.
there maybe isn't other materials. But yeah, I think 1,000 is probably the number because I don't think anything on there is too like changing about us. Like it's very much kind of our pillars.
Static.
And then I guess now the website as well. I know Monty started it and I saw that. And I think we talked about it a little. He made a few comments on my presentation. I commented back at him. I haven't seen any other action. So I didn't know. I saw you were on vacation, so I didn't want to.
yeah, I had
Uh,
no email, but
I saw that.
I'm back.
We need to approve those rec cards now in this fiscal. I mean, do you, sorry, Sean, does your office have the budget to, do the $270
Yep.
expense right now?
Yep.
So I feel like that's something we should vote on now, especially knowing that our next meeting is up in the air and.
We
we're
did
still-
vote on
We voted last time.
Last
We did
meeting
vote on
and
it.
approved it.
But we got a new quote. Do we need to vote on the new quote or anything? Okay.
I don't, yeah, and that's, I'll review. I have it written down somewhere, but if we want to work with them, I don't see if you like working with.
Yeah,
them.
yeah. No, that's
It's fine.
I don't think we put a dollar amount to it. I think we just approved it with the caveat that Sean's
Would
office
find
would
the
pay for
money,
it. Yeah, would
yes.
find. He'll scrape together the
That's right,
pennies
I
to
remember
fund it.
that.
Yeah.
I have a printing line item, so in my budget, so I'm not going outside of any boundaries and,
Teresa,
and our
in your,
fiscal runs to June, so.
Oh,
we
okay.
We don't need
Great.
to.
Great. I
in
appreciate
your
that.
digital media savviness, the fact that that's going into a printed rack card, I think we talked about this briefly last time, but could it not have some sort of a digitized format where it's got hyperlinks? And that I can see going out through some distribution channels as well.
Newsletter 1 week,
Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, that will take me like 10 minutes maximum.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think we
just do
should
that.
definitely have a digitized version for sure.
Anything we print, we have that. It's like the cultural plan, right? People-
Yeah,
We have the printed, but we also,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But something that's got hyperlinks in it so people can actually take action with it or.
I can follow up with Sean, but I didn't know if you wanted to check in with Monty about the website and just where it was at, or I don't know. I think he had a question about a picture, so that might be where he like got stuck.
sign a copy to that last email from you.
I didn't email him,
Okay.
so if you want me to, I will, but I know you handed him the website, so I was just.
Yeah, if you want to send it to me, it'll
Perfect.
just remind me to follow up. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, motion to adjourn.
I think there's a comment up there from Catherine. Just want to make sure that we saw her.
Thank you. As far as public speaking for potential educators, helping connect them with Toastmasters could be an option. And co-op a grant for artists potentially. Great. Thank you for that recommendation.
Or see Jen.
Yeah.
New Hampshire Theater Project does public speaking.
Can I hire you, Karen?
Absolutely.
Person.
I just advocate.
Great, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I so move.
All right,
I'll
a
do the
second. Great. All in favor? Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Catherine.
Sure.